Okay, you are very welcome. This is the Adult Education Space, Temple Bethel, Riverside, California. And everybody, it's very welcome. We are exactly the week before Purim, that it's one of the main holidays in the Hebrew calendar. And the question about this meeting is if joy is a Jewish value. This is my question, and I will try to answer this question. And we are going to discuss about this value. I'm thinking that it's very important because we say shenichnas Adar marbim besimcha. When we start the month of Adar, the month of Adar is the month that we celebrate Purim. Shenichnas Adar marbim besimcha. We when Adar starts, we increase our happiness, our joy, and let's try to understand what is to increase our joy. Welcome, Randy, and welcome, Sandy. The meaning of joy in Hebrew is also simcha, happiness. Perhaps you know many people who call simcha. It's a Hebrew name. It's a very strong name, simcha. And we can find many ways to understand this Hebrew value. First of all, we need to go to the Talmud, Tanit 29a, and is there exactly where appears Mishenichnas Adar Marbim Besimcha. And this is the way that we understand that when we start the month of Adar, we increase our happiness. We need also to remember when we pray the Abdallah, when we pray the prayer, when Shabbat it's ending, it's part of the Abdallah that we sing La Yehudim Aita Ora Vesimcha Vesason Veikar. The Jews enjoy light and gladness, happiness and honor. This is something that appears many times in the Jewish tradition, but also appears in many places that we used to read prayers. And what is exactly joy? How we can increase our happiness during the months of Adar? This is a question that sometimes it's not so easy to answer. Joy as a form or divine service. We need to understand that sometimes the Torah give us the path, and we find, for example, in the book of Psalms, Ibdu et Hashem besimcha, serve the Lord with joy. The Torah commands serving God with joy. And we are going to understand what is joy. In Jewish thought, joy isn't optional or just emotional. It's more than this. It's a spiritual way. In the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, verse 47, even serving God without joy implies that joy elevates religious life. Sorry. Joy also it's a ways of resilience. The teaching about Adar appears in the context of hard times. And this is something like Meshuge, how we can be happy when we remember a tragic history. When we are talking about Purim, we need to remember that our people was in the Persian Empire, and in the day that they supposed to be killed, they received the authorization to fight for their lives. And then we celebrate. What we celebrate? Do we have reasons to celebrate when we fight to survive? Is it enough to understand what is joy, what is celebration, or we erase the tragic side of the history, or we find in the joy, in the happiness, an instrument of defense? We need to see, and we are going to evaluate this. Joy also as a resilience. The teaching about Adar appears in the context of hard times. The month of Adar contains the holiday of Purim, which celebrates the survival of the Jewish people in the story told in the book of Esther. Increasing joy in Adar is a spiritual response to vulnerability. We cultivate joy as strength. Simcha, in a Jewish practice. Festivals are called Zman Simchateinu, time of our joy. Weddings emphasize Simcha. Even daily mitzvot are ideally performed with joy. And there is also like a contradiction. We have always two sides. When in the wedding, that it's perhaps the most important time of joy for a couple and for two families, we break a glass or a cup, okay? In the middle of the ceremony, we break a cup to remember the destruction of the first and the second temple of Jerusalem. We are in the most important time with joy, with celebration, and we stop the ceremony to break a glass, to remember the tragedy. You can see that there is two sides in life, happiness and sadness, and sometimes we need to find the other side to survive. It's like mandatory. Without happiness, it's very difficult to survive these times and other times. Jewish joy, it's not denial or suffering. It's coexistent with grief. There are fast days and mourning periods too. And the calendar itself show us that it's very emotional and complex. From Tisha B'Av, mourning, to Purim, joy. We have exactly the two extremes. We have the deepest day in the year, that it's Tisha B'Av. We fast and we remember the destruction of the Temple of Jerusalem, of the Holy Temple of Jerusalem. In the other side, we have Purim. And do you remember what happened in Purim? What is mandatory in Purim? Just in Purim? Something regarding to drink. What happened? What is mandatory in Purim?
Is it 4 glasses of wine?
I'm talking about Purim, not Pesach.
Oh,
That's Pesach, isn't it?
Yes, but I'm talking about Purim. What is mandatory in Purim? You can't distinguish.
Hamantashen.
No, but I'm talking about wine. I'm talking about wine, Sandy. You can't distinguish. You need to drink till you can distinguish between Aman and Mordechai. And it's the unique day that it's allowed to drink. When you drink too much, you're happy.
Oh.
Okay? But it's a unique day. The other days of the year, you can't, it's not allowed to drink too much. When you drink wine for a kiddush, you drink just a cup for a kiddush. You don't drink a bottle just for you. Okay? But during Purim, it's the unique day that you can drink too much, and it's allowed by the Jewish authorities. And what happened one day before? Yes, you have the happiness, you can drink, you can be happy, one day before, you have the fast of Esther, Ta'anit Esther. Okay? Do you remember why Esther fast? Because she tried to keep the attention of the king Ahasuerus, and it was a way to show how worried he was with her people, the people of Israel. And till today exists the fast of Esther, Ta'anit Esther, one day before Purim. Then you can see the extremes. You are going from the fast till the time that you drink too much, till you can distinguish between Aman and Mordechai. Then Simcha, joy. We're talking about the festival, and the same happen in the Orthodox circles when you have a wedding. It's very common that the groom and the bride fast before the wedding. And what happened after the wedding? They drink to celebrate. You can see always the two sides. So, joy is deeply rooted in Jewish tradition. Adar doesn't create joy from nowhere. It reminds us and amplifies something already considered sacred. We can also understand that Purim marks a dramatic reversal, a decree of destruction, hidden divine presence, sudden salvation, fear transformed in celebration. Adar becomes the symbol of hidden hope turning into revealed joy. And the Talmud actually contrasts Adar with the months of Av. When Av begins, the months of Av, the months of Tisha B'Av, we decrease joy. When Adar begins, we increase joy. What does increase means? This is also a question. It doesn't say be joyful, feel happy, pretend everything is good. It says increase joy. Joy already exists. Joy can be cultivated. Joy is a practice, not just a mood. Some ways of Jewish tradition understand the mean increase. Add gratitude, add celebration, add generosity. Remember that during Purim, we used to practice what we call in Hebrew mishloach manot, pouring gifts to the poor. Add connection and community, lighten judgment and conflict, and joy becomes really very important in the emotional side. Remember also that God's name never appears explicitly in the book of Esther. Adar teach us even when God seems hidden, even when history feels random, there is a deeper pattern. Joy in Adar, it's not happiness, it's truth in hidden meaning. And in Hasidic thought, especially influenced by Israel Baal Shem Tov, he was the founder of the Hasidic movement. He was also known as Besht. Joy breaks spiritual barriers. Sadness blocks growth. Joy expands the soul. There is even a famous Hasidic teaching: a little light dispels much darkness. Joy is the light. I always like to remember a very nice story a rabbi asked to the students how they can, if they can find any object to fulfill a room, and then they came with different things. One student came with sand, but it was not enough sand to fulfill the room, and the other came with leaves, and other one came with a candle, and the light of the candle fulfilled the room. Sometimes the same happen with happiness. When we are happy, we can expand and we can share this good energy with others. And this has happened sometimes, yes, you have your reason not to be happy. But if you are going to listen more tsures and more tsures, more problems and more problems, yes, we'll be happy to change your mood. But if you are going to find people, positive people, people who share their joy, yes, they have a special light, and this light can be shared by you. Also, a psychological insight, Adar happens near the end of winter. It precedes Nisan, the months of Passover and redemption. We have in the Jewish calendar the months of Adar, Tishrei, Cheshvan, Kislev, Tevet, Shvat, Adar, Nisan. Nisan, the months of redemption. Pesach, it's coming. Passover, it's coming. Spirituality, it's a preparation month. Before redemption comes, cultivate joy. Before miracles, you remember the miracles that happened in the land of Egypt. Before miracles, expand your heart. Joy becomes a tool of transformation. And what we learn from the Talmud about joy, this is one of the most beautiful ironies. The statement appears in the tractate about tragedy and communal suffering. What is the message? Judaism does not deny pain. And this is important. We say that pain exists, but it refuses to let pain define the whole story. Adar teach emotional elasticity. You need to shake and to find inside the darkness the light. You need to move your body, your mind. You need to think, and you need to change your mind. And if from the sadness, you need to find the happiness.
Rabbi, can you
Yes,
let Randy in?
he's not here. Let
It's
me
in the
see.
chat. It said to let Randy in.
Okay, let me do it. Just a minute. Okay.
You can all welcome Randy.
Yes. Let me see. Okay. Thank you for. I'm thinking that they are in now. Yes. Let's see. Randy. I don't see Randy. Are you in?
He's
Yes.
there now.
Okay, perfect. Welcome on board, Randy. I'm sorry, I didn't see that you was in the waiting room. Other things that we are talking about the happiness. Okay, we have many resources. The Talmud, Tanit 39a, the book of Psalms, the Psalm 100, verse 2, serve the Lord with joy, a core verse for the spiritual centrality of joy. The book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, verse 47, a striking passage explains exile as resulting from not serving God with joy, often quoted in Hasidic thought. And we have in the book of Esther, Megillat Esther, ליהודים הייתה אורה ושמחה. The Jews had light and joy. And this is also part of the Abdallah. I said this before. I don't know if you know this melody. ליהודים הייתה אורה ושמחה. ליהודים הייתה אורה ושמחה. כן תהיה לנו כוס ישועתה אשא, ובשם אדוני אקרא. Ora vesimcha. It's another way to sing the Abdallah, but what I'm trying to share with you, that it's important, the light and the happiness, and this is part of the ritual, and this is part of the one of the main prayers in our tradition. When we are talking about Purim, let me just also tell that we are talking about light, and we are talking about happiness, and we are talking about miracles. And always I like to remember that we have just two Hebrew holidays that we pronounce a blessing about miracles. One of them is Purim. What was happening in Purim? We were so close to be killed, and then we survived. And which other holiday we are talking about miracles? Hanukkah. Very good. We are talking about the miracles of Hanukkah. Yes, the candles, or the oil that we have just for one day, and then finally the Kohanim use the oil during the Hashmonaim, not the Kohanim. The Hashmonaim use the oil during 8 days. The miracle of a minority fighting against a majority. But we are talking about joy. Remember that Israel Baal Shem Tov, the philosophy of the Hasidim, or of the Hasidic movement, it's about joy, it's about dance, it's about music, it's about nigunim, to be together, to celebrate together. And this came as an answer after a period of pogroms in Europe. What was a pogrom? A pogrom was a persecution against the Jews. They came to the little shtetls, to the village, and they destroyed. They put fire in the synagogues. They kill people. It was really terrible. And the Hasidic movement came not just as a spiritual answer, came also to give through the happiness an answer for the Jewish people. And we need to remember that there are many people who laugh for other people. Let me share with you a text, and you are going to correct me if it's not right, this text. The English people used to laugh from the people who live in Ireland. The French people make jokes from the people who live in Belgium. The Argentinian people make jokes from the Brazilian. The Brazilian make jokes from the Argentinian. The people who live in Spain, they are making jokes from the Portuguese people. The people from Germany make jokes from the people from Austria. The people from Switzerland, they don't know how to laugh. the people from North America, they laugh from the Polish people. Is it true? Or this written? Yes? Okay. And the Polish people, they still are looking for whom to laugh. Each people made his choice about jokes and about other people and what happened with the people of Israel, which is our choice. Which people we choose to laugh about them. And why it's different with us? Because we are part of each one of the peoples that I talked before. But through our story, through our tragedies, through our past, present, we study to laugh from ourselves. Jews are making jokes from Jews. When a non-Jew talk a joke about Jews, sometimes we don't like. But when a Jew talk jokes about a Jew, there is no problem. When you listen from others, you say, "Oh, it's an anti-Semitic story. He's talking something anti-Semitic." But when we laugh for ourselves, it's completely different. And this is a way to protect ourselves when you can laugh for your own problems, from your own stories, for your own situations, from your own tragedies. How it can be that the day that we remember that the Persian Empire is going to kill us, we celebrate. Okay? And the same happened we are sitting in the Passover Seder and we are celebrating and we are drinking wine, not in the same way that Purim, but we remember the plagues. This is something sad. In one way, we are celebrating, we were slaves, and now we are free. Slavery, it's not something nice to be remembered, but we are sitting and we are celebrating. When we celebrate Hanukkah, yes, we always we remember the miracles, but why we are celebrating? Because before the celebration came the suffer. Yes, our enemies like to destroy the Holy Temple of Jerusalem. And then in a sudden, everything changed and we celebrate. Sandy, I see your hand up.
I was just going to tell you, I lived in Poland for 3 years, and the best jokes were the jokes that Poles told on themselves, not the typical American jokes of how many Poles does it take to do a light bulb or whatever it was. They had very funny jokes about themselves.
Yes, thank you for sharing your experience. Happiness, yes, it's something that it's part of the Jewish values. This is one of the conclusions that I can share with you. And I would like to open, we are going to have a second part of this meeting, but let's do something different today. Okay, we are talking about happiness. Remember also, when we are talking about the holiday of Sukkot, it's also Besamachta bechagecha be'aita sameach. You will enjoy during your holidays, and then you will be happy. It's part of the tradition to be happy, but we have many jokes, and I would like to invite, yes, in this evening, if we can listen some Jewish jokes. There are many jokes around rabbis. There are many jokes about the biblical times. There are many jokes, and if we study especially the movie industry here in America, the main actors were Jews, very popular actors. And this is a legacy, not just for America, for the entire world. This is something that perhaps you that you are living here in America can understand how powerful is the Jewish humor through America that spread around the world. The movie industry, and it's in fact an industry, you need to consider that the TV arrives in many other countries later than in America, and TV channels were really rare in other places. And then in other countries, they bought just the material that was available. And what was available? American movies. And they became very, very popular. Okay, when we are talking about childhood, yes, we can remember and we have in our mind Charles Chaplin, and we have in our mind Curly, Larry, and Moe as part of our families. Yes, they were always at the TV. And we are talking about other one that perhaps many of you like, others perhaps don't like, Woody Allen. Yes, I really love Woody Allen humor, sarcastic humor, very Jewish humor. And we have the legacy of Judaism. It's really very, very big. If you can see here, yes, this is a really a very good book. I don't know if it's an English edition from the Eden to the Shrink. Like this is Jewish humor. I don't know if you can see. Yes, the hat, it's going with the payers directly. Okay, one it's with the payers, and the other one it's without the payers. And we are making jokes about our own history. Also, if it's if we are talking about the Bible, I don't know if the light is good or not. It's Moses with the tablet, and his sign, like he signed the copyright. There are many. This is the Noah Ark, and it's a guy in the front asking smoke or no smoke area. Yes, he's asking the animals. Other typical this is Adam and Eve with the apple, and Adam asked, where is the Jewish bread? With his, yes, she's giving just the apple, and he said, where is the Jewish bread? Okay, typical jokes. For example, a couple that enters to the rabbi office, and they fight. First, the woman enter, and she told her story, and the rabbi listened carefully, and the rabbi said, "You are right." And then it's the turn of the husband. The husband enters alone and talk to the rabbi. The rabbi listened carefully, and he said, "You are right." And the rabbi wife, who was outside, listened everything, said, "How it can be? The wife enters to your office, and you said you are right. The husband entered to your office, and you said you are right. What do you have to say, my dear wife?" to your dear wife? And the rabbi answered, you are right. Yes, everybody's right. And the Jewish humor, it's very special and give us the opportunity to look our life in a different way. Any other joke that you would like to share with us? You like any one of you would like to share a Jewish joke when we are talking about happiness?
Sure.
Marsha?
I don't know any Jewish jokes.
Okay, perhaps it will be fine to have to invite someone to talk about Jewish stories, funny stories. It's a way to recognize our sense of humor also in the difficult times. I would like to share with you a video about Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs. He was a rabbi in the United Kingdom. He passed away. And he talked about happiness in Judaism. And I'm thinking that it's very important. There are some points that I talked before, but what is happiness? What is joy through a Jewish or Hebrew perspective? Okay, this is the idea of this part. Any other commentary before about humor, about happiness? I'm thinking that life without happiness is like a light. It's life without light. It's like it's like a dressing. Yes, you have a plate, you have a food, but if you don't put something special, this something special is going to give you a better taste about the food. And the humor, it's the same. And this is what gave us during the past the opportunity to survive to different and difficult times. Let me share my screen. Just a minute.
And no. But David, you have set us on the right path because you have told us that you're unhappy. And for a Jew to be happy is to have something to be unhappy about. If I were to sum up purely philosophically for a moment the Jewish attitude to happiness, I would say it is this. It is Max Goldberg, who in his 70s suffers a problem with his heart, is immediately rushed into the hospital that I am told is the best in the United States, Massachusetts General. He is there for 7 days. And after 7 days in this magnificent hospital, he checks himself out and goes to a very run-down Jewish hospital in New York's Lower East Side. And the doctor is just fascinated to know, why did he leave this magnificent hospital to come to this run-down place? And he says, Goldberg, tell me, Goldberg, what was the matter there? The doctors, didn't they understand your condition? And Goldberg says, the doctors, double Einsteins. About the doctors, I can't complain. Was it the nurses? Didn't they look after you? About the nurses, angels in human form. About the nurses, I can't complain. So what was it, Goldberg? The food. Didn't you like the food? Goldberg said, the food, manna from heaven. About the food, I can't complain. So Goldberg, why did you leave there and come here? And Goldberg, with a big smile, says, because here I can complain. All of this, all of this leads a French contemporary scholar, Esther Ben Bassa, I think her name is, to write a book about contemporary Jewish life entitled, published earlier this year, Suffering as Identity. And it is that very negative approach to life which has dominated Jewish life in recent decades, not unsurprisingly after 2 centuries of anti-Semitism culminating in the Holocaust. But my latest book, Future Tense, actually says this is the wrong road to go down. So friends, what I'm going to do very simply is to say this. As David has, since John is here, sorry, I should say before I say anything else, if heaven is anything like the Emory University Center for Law and Religion, I will be happy in the world to come. So John, thank you for all you've done for it. It's very interesting. The first word of the book of Psalms is Ashrei, which means happy. But it's a very interesting word. There's no English equivalent because Ashrei is a plural construct. It doesn't mean happy, it means these are the happinesses of. As if in that first word, already to hint to us that there may be many forms of happiness in Judaism. And there are indeed. And I'm only going to look at 3. One, which I think David will meet you halfway, a form of happiness, or at least of existence in Judaism, that is radically different from the kind of life that we hear from the Dalai Lama. That is the first. The second will be one that is very similar to that advocated by the Dalai Lama. And the third will be one on which I believe our various traditions can converge, as it were, from different starting points. So let me begin by saying, and of course David is right, happiness is not the core concept in Judaism. We do not hold, like Aristotle, that it is that at which all things aim. In Judaism, we would sum up Judaism as life, liberty, and the pursuit of holiness, not happiness. And that, incidentally, is not an unsound way of proceeding, because, as I mentioned yesterday, and as many thinkers have realized, from Aristotle to what's Mr. Flo, Mihaly, Csikszentmihalyi, yeah? Mr. Peak experiences, you do not arrive at happiness by pursuing it directly. And that is how Maimonides defines, in the 10th chapter of Hilchos Tshuva, what is ha'oved et Hashem me'ava, somebody who serves God with love, in his fine words, oseh hamet mipnei shehu emet, he does what is right because it is right, v'sof hatova lavo, and the happiness will come. So happiness is part of Judaism, but it is not that at which we aim. Now, the first thing that is very obvious is that you read the Bible, happiness is not something you necessarily associate with the biblical heroes. The heroes of the religious imagination in Judaism. They struggle, they wrestle, they argue, they contend. They fight with the people for the sake of God. They fight with God for the sake of the people. At least 4 biblical heroes pray to God to die. Moses, Elijah, Jeremiah, and Jonah. And of course, Job likewise. The figures of the Bible know exile, they know persecution, they know defeat, but they know happiness, all too rarely. Nowhere is there a more ironic word in Hebrew than the name of the first Jewish child, Isaac. The Hebrew means Yitzchak, he will laugh. And yet Isaac's life is not full of laughter. As a child, he sees a father who is prepared to sacrifice him. As a father himself, he sees his two sons engage in sibling rivalry and is deceived by one of them. So, in Judaism, happiness is at the end of a long and winding road. When, in the 20th century, the late Rabbi Soloveitchik spoke of Jewish life, he spoke of it as thesis and antithesis without the mediating synthesis. When a contemporary Talmudic scholar, Adin Steinsaltz, wrote a book about Jewish life, he called it strife of the spirit. The Talmud says that sages have no rest, neither in this world nor the next. So I think we can say this, that there is a very, very beautiful image of happiness as being at one with the universe. But that is not the Jewish way. In Judaism, at least in the mainstream, Judaism is a religion of active engagement with the world, driven by the cognitive dissonance between the world that is and the world that ought to be. Judaism lives in that dissonance. We live in this world, but we know just how far from the ideal it is, and all our actions are intended to reduce that distance between the is and the ought. However, I want to say this, that there is a kind of happiness in all of this. Think of Abraham, the grandfather of the world's three great Abrahamic monotheism. Think of his life. He has to tear himself away from everything that makes somebody feel at home in the world. He has to leave behind his land, his birthplace, his father's house, and travel to, says God, the land which I will show you. As soon as he arrives in the land, there's a famine and he has to leave. Twice his life is in danger, and Sarah has to pretend she's his sister rather than his wife because he's afraid they'll kill him. God promises him children, as many as the stars of the sky, as the grains of sand on the seashore. He has to wait till he's an old man before he has even one child. God promises, arise, walk through the land, the length, the breadth thereof, I give it all to you. And when Sarah dies, he does not have 1 square inch that he can call his own in which to bury her, and he has to pay an inflated price for the burial plot. And yet, the end of his life, the Bible says, and Abraham died of good old age, zaken v'saver, old and satisfied with life. One of the most serene deaths in the Bible. There is a kind of happiness in all this. It is not happiness written by Johann Sebastian Bach. This is happiness at which Beethoven arrived at the very end of his life in those late string quartets. Or to take a non-musical analogy, you know, when I went to study philosophy at Cambridge, the invisible hero, he died more than a decade earlier, was Ludwig Wittgenstein. Now, Wittgenstein was a serious depressive. 3 of his siblings committed suicide. His whole life was spent in anguish and self-doubt. You know, he once said to Bertrand Russell, "Russell, tell me, am I a complete idiot or not? If I'm a complete idiot, I'll study aeronautical engineering. If I'm not, I'll study philosophy." I mean, you know, I love Bertrand Russell, you know, he was so un-Jewish, you know. Bertrand Russell once said about G.E. Moore, "I only once heard G.E. Moore tell a lie." And that's when I asked him, "Moore, have you ever told a lie?" And he said, "Yes." Sorry, okay. That's what you get by studying philosophy. Anyway, so Wittgenstein, you know, even to think straight, has to leave Cambridge, go to a little fjord in Norway, in total isolation. This man, I actually had my room in Cambridge, just above his doctor's surgery where he died. Wittgenstein's last words were, "Tell them I've had a wonderful life." Can you understand? I think one can. So that is the first kind of happiness that I associate with Judaism, which is so radically unlike, the serene Buddhist happiness. It is the happiness not of being at peace in the universe, but the happiness that comes from challenge, struggle, sometimes sacrifice for high ideals, a life that has its setbacks and its moments of despair, those moments that you hear so absolutely in Moses, in Jeremiah. The point, for me as a Jew, the point in the New Testament that speaks most closely as a Jew is the last words of Jesus when he is quoting the Targum, the Aramaic translation of Psalm 22, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, my God, why have you forsaken me? That's a really Jewish moment. That you find God in the very act of asking, of doubting, of questioning. And there is, I think, a certain kind of, it's what Herbert Schneider once famously called sacred discontent. Anyone know of a guy called Bob Geldof who used to do this? You come across this man? Oh, sorry, you don't want the Bible according to Bob Geldof. All right, we'll move on. Anyway, so there it is. So there is, I think, fulfillment, vividness, passion in the struggle, and moments of exhilaration. You hear that exhilaration in the song the Israelites sing as they cross the Red Sea. And that is, I think, a certain kind of happiness in Judaism. Happiness is struggle. It comes in those last moments of life where you look back and you say, in the words of Rabbi Tarfon, it is not for you to complete the work, but neither are you free to desist from it, from having taken part in the struggle, knowing that you struggled in a noble cause. That's happiness one. There is a second kind of happiness in Judaism, and I call this the happiness of the wisdom tradition in Judaism, the happiness you find in the book of Proverbs, in some of the Psalms, and so on and so forth. And that kind of happiness comes closest to the kind of happiness of which the Dalai Lama speaks, and with shaded variations, the kind of happiness at which the various strands of the Greek philosophical tradition also spoke. That is a happiness of balance, of virtue, of compassion, of living well and faring well. That kind of osher is the happiness of one who is good, who does good, who has been blessed in life, and who has been held in high regard. And that is the happiness set forth for us in Psalm 1. Happy is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, or stand in the way of sinners, or sit in the seat of mockers, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. He is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields fruit in its season, whose leaf does not wither. Whatever he does prospers. That's happiness as rootedness. There's something very interesting in Hebrew, the word secular. Where does the word secular come from? Seculum, meaning this worldly. Would that be about right? In Hebrew, the word for secular is chol. And chol is the Hebrew for sand. Why? Because sand gets blown by the wind. You're not rooted anywhere. And that is exactly what Psalm 1 says. Lokein harasha'im, the wicked aren't like the righteous. Ki im kamotza shetifenu ruach, they're like the chaff that the wind blows away. So this happiness as rootedness and a giving forth fruit and all that kind of thing. And that is the happiness of the wisdom tradition. Of course, the most remarkable account, very complex account of this kind of happiness, it is challenging and it is very subversive, is the happiness mentioned in the book which you quoted, the book of Kohelet, of Ecclesiastes. Who is Ecclesiastes? The man who has everything. He has a wardrobe full of Armani suits, a garage full of Lamborghinis. He does the shopping in the Lamborghini. He has a second home in the south of France. You name it. What else do you have to have in order to be Ecclesiastes? And of course, as you will know, having a garage full of Lamborghinis yourself, that does not buy you happiness. And there he is saying, meaningless, everything is meaningless. And I just want to be tiny bit homiletical here, because let's do a little bit of stuff that actually works in life. I once was able to decode Ecclesiastes, because when I was a student in 1968, and for the first time I met a man who had great influence on my life, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, the late Lubavitcher Rebbe. And I was just about to go in to see him, and his followers told me a lovely story, which I share with you. Somebody had written to the Rebbe. You know, he was a great holy man. Somebody had written to the Rebbe, I need the Rebbe's help. I am deeply depressed. I can hardly find the will to go on living. I pray and I am not moved. I fulfill the commands, and yet I feel no satisfaction. I need the Rebbe's help. And the Rebbe, who used, before he was a leader of the Jewish people, ran a publishing house, and so was used to using typographical symbols, sent him the most brilliant reply, and it did not use a single word. He simply ringed the first word in every sentence. The first word in every sentence was I. If you want to know why you're miserable, because you start every sentence with the word I. And it's exactly as John said yesterday, the truth is, as Viktor Frankl always used to say, in the name of Kierkegaard, the door to happiness opens outward. You have to abandon the I and focus on the you, on the other. And if you actually look, and this gets a little bit diluted in English, but if you look at the Hebrew of the first two chapters of the book of Ecclesiastes, there is no other book in the Bible that uses the first person singular so much. Banitili, asitili, kanitili, each one of those is a double I. I made for myself, I bought for myself, I acquired for myself, I planted for myself. It's all for myself. And that is why he does not find happiness. And eventually, exactly as you said, David, he finds happiness in the now, in love, in work. Sweet is the sleep of a laboring man. Rejoice with the woman you've taken. In eat, he even finds a bit of Epicurean happiness in eating and drinking, and a touch of the Robin Williams in Dead Poets Society. You know, carpe diem, rejoice in your creator in the days of your youth, etc., etc. So that is the wisdom tradition. It is the most universal. It is there in ancient Egyptian wisdom literature. It's in the whole philosophical tradition of the Greeks, in different ways, in Aristotle, the Stoics, the Epicureans, and others, and almost all the great religious traditions. It comes in many shapes and sizes. Some are more this worldly, others are less this worldly, but that is the life of balance and beauty and goodness and virtue and order and inner peace, which is the exact opposite of the first kind of happiness, which is a life of struggle and passion. And that is another version of happiness in Judaism. Do not believe that there is only one way to live a good and happy life, even within a single tradition. So that's number two. And finally, number three, the point that I just hinted at yesterday, the point where I think we can converge whatever our tradition, and that is what I called social happiness. And it is far too little spoken about nowadays. This is a rare idea. And this comes from the concept of covenant. Social happiness comes from the concept of covenant. And covenant itself comes out of the paradox set forth with beautiful clarity in the first three chapters of the book of Genesis. On the one hand, the human being is supremely valuable. Every one of us, regardless of color, class, culture, gender, every one of us is in the image and likeness of God. This, I think, the most single radical assertion of monotheism, as if discovering God, singular and alone, humanity found the human person, singular and alone. only in monotheism do you get the birth of the individual as having ultimate significance. Set against that is, and again in Hebrew this it's like a discord in the middle of a Mozart symphony. Because we have had Genesis 1, and God saw that it was good, and God saw that it was good. And suddenly, 7 times, and suddenly in Genesis 2 we hear the words, not good. The words not good only appear twice in the whole of the Pentateuch. What is not good? It is not good for man to be alone. So on the one hand, this almost infinite dignity of the human individual, but on the other hand, the inadequacy of the human individual. And out of that tension, the whole human drama as conceived by Judaism, that the whole drama is generated by that one single paradox, which to sum up what the problem is, how do we construct relationships of trust that are not relationships of dominance? How do we establish human bonds based on the recognition of the independence and integrity of the other? And that is the problem whose solution is covenant. Covenant is a moral commitment in which 2 individuals or more, each respecting the dignity and independence of the other, come together in a bond of love and trust to do together what neither can do alone. And the paradigm case of that is marriage. And the most daring, really audacious proposition of the Hebrew Bible is that the relationship between God and humanity is just that, the relationship of a marriage. It sounds sacrilegious, blasphemous. What is there that God cannot do alone? But there is, of course, one thing God cannot do alone, which is to live within the human heart. For that, he needs our partnership. And this generates a third form of happiness, which is not the struggle, form 1. It's not being at peace with yourself, form 2. This form of happiness is all about relationships. The quality and depth of our relationships with the other, with the human other, and the divine other, which is God. And the Bible sees this kind of happiness not just as a personal matter, but essential to the health of a society as a whole. In other words, a society is made by the extent to which husbands and wives, parents and children, communities, and ultimately a whole society can achieve that happiness based on relationships of mutual respect and mutual responsibility. And the Bible says something astonishing. It really is astonishing. You kind of miss it if you're not concentrating. And here it is. We have 2 passages of curses in the Mosaic books. One at the end of Leviticus chapter 26. The other towards the end of Deuteronomy 28. Terrifying literature of curses. The one in Leviticus happens because of national apostasy. You reject me, says God. You abandon me. You treat me negligently. So I will abandon you. That's big-time national apostasy. What is remarkable about Deuteronomy is there's no apostasy. The only reason the curses happen is Tachat asher lo avadata et Hashem Elokecha b'simcha, because you did not serve God with joy, v'tuv levav, and gladness of heart, merov kol, out of the abundance of all good things. It is a stunning insight. A society that loses the art of happiness is a society on the brink of decline. And that makes happiness a social and, in the broadest possible sense, a political issue. So, I think what And let us just chase that for one moment. We'll do it very quickly. What does social happiness entail? First of all, can I just point out one feature of the Bible, which I think is tremendously important, which is that the book of Genesis comes before the book of Exodus. Isn't that interesting? What do I mean? And Christians should see this much more readily than Jews, because in the Christian Bible, the book of Ruth appears before the first book of Samuel, right? And it's very interesting. In the Hebrew Bible, the book of Ruth appears nowhere near the book of Samuel, but the Christian Bible gets it in the chronological order. What is Exodus about? The birth of Israel as a nation. What is the first book of Samuel about? The birth of Israel as a kingdom. They are both political moments. But what is Genesis about? Human relationships. It's about husbands and wives, parents and children, siblings and their rivalry, about Abraham and Sarah and Isaac and Rebekah and Jacob and Rachel and Leah. That's what it's about, personal relationships. The Bible tells us the story of the personal relationship before it begins to talk about the political phenomena of the book of Exodus. Ditto with 1 Samuel, which talks about the birth of Israel's monarchy, first Saul, then David. It tells us the story of Ruth, of the what's the phrase, that lovely phrase, the kindness of strangers, of Ruth's attachment to Naomi and Boaz's kindness to both of them. And right at the end of the book of Ruth comes the punchline that Ruth is in fact the great-grandmother of King David, Israel's greatest kings. The Torah is telling us something extremely important: the primacy of the personal over the political. Do not expect to create a happy society simply by political institutions, which of necessity use force, coercive power. That's what politics is about. The primacy of the personal over the political. Okay. Oh, I like that. You have made somebody very happy. Thank you. Okay, that's number one. Number two, a fundamental Jewish distinction, as you know, it follows from this, is that happiness is to be found down here in the here and now, in this world, in this life, in the physical universe that God created and 7 times called God good. It is here in this embodied existence, that wonderful mix, as the Bible calls it, of dust of the earth and breath of God. In other words, Judaism rejects a whole tradition in religion, Gnosticism, Manichaeism, even Platonism, that sharp separation of body and soul, the physical, the spiritual, the time and the eternity, the particular and the universal. Happiness is down here in the particularity of our embodied existence, and it was the late Sidney Morgenbesser, if I'm not mistaken, professor of philosophy at Columbia, who once proved how useless Platonism can be in the real world. You know, Plato's theory of forms, that the reality is not all these particulars down here, it's the form of things up there. He took his philosophy students to a restaurant in the Lower East Side, called over the waiter and said, "Waiter, I'd like to order soup." So the waiter said, "Yeah, pea soup, chicken soup, we have a wonderful borscht." "None of those," says Morgenbesser, "I just want soup." If you want to drink soup, you've got to drink it in its particularity. You cannot drink the Platonic form of soup. So, okay, so Judaism is down here in the particularity. That's point 2. Number 3, there is in Judaism, and this again, very distinctive, a rejection in the Jewish mainstream, not on the borders, but of the voluntary embrace of suffering or poverty. With the exclusion of the Qumran sect, there are no monasteries, no convents in Judaism. There is no virtue of celibacy in Judaism. There are no holy mendicants who give away their wealth and live as paupers. And there are some remarkable statements in Judaism. We have one classic example of a person who does give up something the Nazarite who forswears wine and all the products of grapes and doesn't have a haircut either. And the Bible says when he comes to the end of his period of Nazariteship, he brings a sin offering. Why does he bring a sin offering? Now, the plain reading of this is obvious. He's bringing a sin offering because he's going from a high state of holiness back into ordinary life. But the rabbis read it exactly the other way around. Why is he bringing a sin offering? For the sin of becoming a Nazarite in the first place. He gave up wine. God created wine. He gives it his personal shechsher sometimes. God created wine for us to enjoy, and this man turns his back on one of God's blessings. So that rejection of rejection is very central to Judaism. And Maimonides says something so profound here. Maimonides, in the Guide of the Perplexed, talks about the perfection of the body and perfection of the soul. The perfection of the body is, creating a society where you can live, earn a living, live in safety. The perfection of the soul is something we all do in the innermost recesses of our own consciousness. And Maimonides, who is a great perfection of the soul guy, says, nonetheless, perfection of the body takes priority because you don't believe that if you're sick or you're hungry or you're homeless, you can think noble thoughts about God. Poverty humiliates. And that is a very Jewish approach, very different from other religions. In order to be able to have the higher spiritual achievements, your basic human needs need to be satisfied. And that's why Judaism, from the very earliest days, and always, throughout all the diaspora, had its own voluntary welfare state, which made sure that no one lived at the extremes of poverty. Then, of course, we have David's point, which is very often life is boring, and it is a matter of taking the kids to school, or it would be if I ever took the kids to school. I learned, especially not to be able to drive in order to, anyway. And here I would say, David, one of the most glorious things of Judaism, it's the way, I call it the poetry of the everyday. When food comes with its aura of sanctity, the whole laws of kashrut, when on Shabbat, you take a simple glass of wine and 2 loaves of bread, and you welcome the divine presence, to share it with you. When you sing a hymn of praise to the woman of the family, when you bless your children, Judaism etches the quotidian with the charisma of sanctity. And that is what we call halakha. It's there in the Bible. It's that way in which we made the home the locus of so many of our important ceremonies and rituals, not the synagogue. And that, I think, the poetry of the everyday is what makes the boring, nonetheless, happy-making. And that's very important. And then I mentioned the Sabbath. This, too, is important for societal happiness. Read the classical writers on Judaism. The Greek and Roman writers who wrote about Judaism were scathing about one institution above all, the Sabbath. They couldn't work out the Sabbath. What is this Sabbath? Jews are lazy. That's what they said. That's it. They couldn't believe. Greeks, everyone knows what is a holy day. Everyone knows that. But a holy day whose holiness consists in the fact that you don't work, that they didn't understand. The Talmud says, and I never checked this, somebody here will know, the Talmud says that when the scholars, in the letter of Aristeas, gathered together those 72 or 70 scholars to translate the Bible into Greek, the Septuagint, they deliberately changed certain sentences that they thought would be unintelligible in Greek. And according to the Gemara and the Megillah, if I'm not mistaken, one of those was the sentence, on the 7th day, God completed the work which he had done. And instead they wrote, on the 6th day. Because they didn't think a Greek could understand that Sabbath is itself a creation. Now, it is interesting that Greece and Rome declined and fell with remarkable rapidity. And Jews and Judaism are still here. And the reason is that just like individuals, civilizations can suffer from burnout. And the Sabbath is the antidote to that. And that is why the Sabbath is societal happiness at its very best. Go to Jerusalem on a Sabbath morning, breathe the quiet. Understand that on the Sabbath, where there's no working, no shopping, no driving, we're all enjoying God's world on equal terms. Shabbat is civic time, the way a wonderful park is civic space. It's beautiful, and we all enjoy it on equal terms. That is part of societal happiness. Then gratitude. You will know from the famous so-called nuns study, which began in the University of Minnesota. I don't know where it began, where it followed up. But this was looking at a number of nuns who at the age of 20 or so had written on their entrance as novitiates their own autobiography in their own words. And 60 years later, they found that those who expressed at the age of 20 the greatest gratitude, thankfulness for life, were the ones who lived longer or longest. And that is one of the great things about religion in general. It teaches you gratitude. I think in one longitudinal study they discovered that people who go regularly to a house of worship live 7 years longer than those who don't. Or as I said to Elaine, maybe it just seems 7 years longer. When a Jew gets up, he or she says a whole litany of blessings. Thank you, God, for giving me back life. Thank you, God, for the cockcrow who woke me up in the morning and I threw something at it. Thank you, God, for when I put my foot down, you create some ground for it to stand on. All the rest of it, everything you can thank God for, we thank God for every day. And that every item of food, every item of drink, we thank God. We do, it was Heidegger, who's not my favorite person, who said, thinking is thanking. And that is true in Judaism. So there is the gratitude. And then, and all of these things, and then all of those things are embodied in Jewish law, and the result of which is to create what Aaron Lichtenstein calls societal beatitude. I would just add two other elements. One that has become highly significant today with the spread of the angry atheists. You have some in America. We have most of them in Britain, or we exported some to you. We sent you Christopher Hitchens. We kept Richard Dawkins in case we felt lonely. And you know, the angry atheist, what I call the intellectual equivalent of road rage. Anyway. And the essence of the angry atheist, here we are in a universe that is meaningless. We are an irrelevant speck on a minor third-rate planet, and in case we thought there was anything special about us, Stephen Hawking and et al. Think there are a billion, infinity of other parallel universes. We are totally insignificant. We are born, we live, we die, and it is as if we had never been. We are dust on the surface of infinity. At the end of the day, to contemplate the meaninglessness of the universe condemns you to an Epicurean morality. And I don't recommend an Epicurean morality because its lifespan was 1 century. I mean, Epicurus, well, it was revived by Lucretius, but one way or another, a society that has gone Epicurean as a society on the brink of decline. In Judaism, we believe there is meaning. We matter in the scheme of things. That is what Viktor Frankl discovered in Auschwitz, quoting Nietzsche, those who have a why can survive any how. Those who feel a sense of divine presence, a task, a call, a vocation, a mission, can sustain the will to live even at the gates of hell on earth. And that sense of belonging happens with special power in the Abrahamic monotheisms. It begins with God's call to Abraham, and it is there in Maimonides, who codifies the view of the rabbis, that each of us should consider at every moment that the fate of the world will be dependent on how we choose our next action. If there's one thing Abrahamic monotheisms do, it is attach significance to the individual life. And finally, the point at which we really converge with the Dalai Lama, which is hope, that last great dimension of happiness. There is a direct contrast between the Greek concepts of ananke and moira and inexorable fate on the one hand, and the Jewish concepts of freedom, responsibility, repentance, forgiveness on the other. Do we face a closed or open future? Those cultures that believe in inexorable fate write tragedies. They produce a Sophocles and Aeschylus, geniuses, but they write tragedies. Those cultures that believe in choice and forgiveness, they don't even understand the word tragedy. For a people that suffered more than most, you will be surprised to know that in Hebrew there is no word for tragedy. And when modern Hebrew wanted it, it had to borrow tragedia. Why? Because Judaism, and doubtless Christianity likewise, are the principled refutation of tragedy in the name of hope. And that, I think, is the final point of happiness. So I hope I've given you an idea now of three kinds of happiness, three strands in a very complex picture in Judaism. Happiness is struggle, let's call that prophetic happiness. Number two, happiness is peace, let's call that wisdom happiness. And happiness as the thing we share, let's call that covenantal happiness. And I think that is enough, at least, to begin a conversation. But let us end by saying, let us have this conversation because it matters. And it matters because only if we know where we want to get in our lives do we stand any chance of getting there. So let me finally end with my favorite story of all time on just this point, and it makes me happy. Here it is. My hero, philosophically, Ludwig Wittgenstein. The late Professor David Dauber, Regius Professor of Roman Law, once told me that Wittgenstein, I told Dauber, he said, what are you doing? I was a student at the time. I said, I'm studying philosophy. Dauber said, terrible thing, philosophy. Philosophers are so, they're so up in the air with their own things, they never know what day of the week it is. It's terrible, give up philosophy immediately. And he told me the following story, that Wittgenstein was standing at the Oxford station waiting for the London train with two of his disciples, H.L.A. Hart, the Professor of Jurisprudence, and Elizabeth Anscombe, and they were so immersed in metaphysical conversation that they entirely failed to notice the train as it steamed into the station, and as people were getting off and so on, and it was only as the train was leaving the station they looked up and they saw the train. And as Dauber told it, Professor Hart ran and heaved himself on board, and Elizabeth Anscombe, an enormous woman, ran and heaved herself on board, and Wittgenstein ran but could not catch up with the train and was standing there as it steamed out of the station. And he was looking so crestfallen that people came up, a lady saw him and took pity on him and said, "Don't worry, there'll be another train in an hour's time." And he looked at her and said, "But you don't understand. They came to see me off." Thank you.
It's really a genius, Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs, and I hope that you enjoy his lecture, his talk, like I enjoyed. It's really happiness. Yes, it's an entire world that we can discuss about, but through the happiness we can arrive to the holiness. And another point of view that is really very important that I would like to remark, it's how important it's to be together. You can open a book and you can laugh alone, but it's not the same if you laugh with others. Sometimes you don't have reason to laugh, but you just listen the laugh of the other and you start to laugh. Yes, just because you listen, because you enter in the same spirit. And this is the spirit of these days, my dear friends, the days of Purim, days of joy. And it's so dark, our world, that when we have a space with light and with holiness and with joy, we need to be together to celebrate. And this is my invitation. Let's celebrate life together. And this is the reason that the rabbi always bother you. Come to the Shabbat, come to the holiday, participate in this activity, in that. Because when we are together, we have reasons to be happy. And this is the main point in Judaism. When we can keep our mitzvot, our commandments with happiness, everything is changed. Everything is different. Everything look completely different. Any commentary from you, please? The floor is open. If you like to open your mic and share your commentary, your thoughts.
It was an amazing presentation.
For some reason, and I don't know what it is, I prefer the word joy.
Joy instead of happiness.
Yes, I don't know why.
Very moved by that presentation. That was very good.
Avi, we couldn't hear you.
Moved by that presentation, very well done, very good. I enjoyed that. Good message.
I'm thinking that this is the point. It's a good message, and we need to think and reflect. And this is something that we are doing. It's like an exercise. Try to see not just your face in front of the mirror. Try to see your soul, and try to laugh. The way that we respect the others, the way that we respect ourselves. This makes sense to have another society. When the people fight with each other, it's a society when you don't find people laugh, smiling. Yes, happy societies, long life, and this is something that you can see. The statistic, people who are more happy, yes, they have a long life. If everything is so difficult, we know that it's difficult, but let's try, and this is the message from the Jewish people, let's try always to find the other side of the coin. The story of Purim, if we stop to read the Megillah and the tragedy and the palace and this and that, but at the end we celebrate. We need to find a way to celebrate. We need to find the way of joy. We need to find the way to be together and to find sense in the things that we are doing. Okay, everything. Also, if you can imagine that it's not relevant, it will be relevant for you. If you are doing this with love, with joy, the result will be different. There are many people who say that if you smile, it's like a mirror in the face of the other. Okay, you smile and the other smile to you, the connection it's completely different. And I would like to wish you Chag Purim Sameach with a lot of joy.
Yeah.
Join us, came to celebrate, and let's see if it's true what it's written in the Talmud. Shenichnas Adar marbim besimcha. When the month of Adar starts, we multiply, we increase our happiness, our joy. Thank you very much for your attention.
Rabbi.
Yes,
Very
Lucy.
It was very, very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
As my mom always said, God bless her, it takes far less muscles to smile than it does to frown. So it's a lot easier to get someone to smile. We need to share.
Thank you.
Laila Tov.
Wonderful class. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.